Okay. One more, just one. Is this world protected? Because you're not the first lot to have come here. Oh, there have been so many. And what you've got to ask is, what happened to them? Hello. I'm the Doctor.
So, here we are, the 11th Doctor. My era of Doctor Who, honestly. So this is the era where I started getting into Doctor Who. Actually, it really was... What was it? So, officially, the first episode I was watching that was Doctor Who, that I didn't know about, was The End of Time. Alright? Had no idea what was going on. Okay? And then I watched this guy explode. And then he was this guy. And he was just as confused as I was. It worked. But that was actually, by the time I'd seen that episode, we were on what turned out to be Season 7B of Doctor. As a matter of fact, Season 7B had just started. So, yeah, I got in the tail end of Matt Smith's era. And honestly, I loved it. And I haven't really gone back to that era since... I think the end of the Capaldi era, actually. No, the middle of the Capaldi era. I'd gone and I'd gotten fully caught up and I'd seen everything Matt Smith had done in regards to his tenure as the Doctor. So then, without not coming back to it for so long, I was wondering, like, do I still like it? Do I still have that same connection to it? Because, in a sense, Matt Smith was my Doctor. He sort of was my standard going into other episodes of Doctor Who. So, would I still feel the same way? And, well, I did. I watched it. And my opinion is, well...
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Yeah, this era is that good. This is possibly my favorite era of Doctor Who. It's definitely my favorite era of New Who. Like, I'm sorry, look, I know David Tennant tends to be the standard for people, but I'm sorry, guys. He plays too cool a character, alright? I can't emphasize with someone that cool. But Matt Smith's Doctor is the epitome of, if he was a little bit worse, he'd be cringe beyond all belief. And that's kind of me in a nutshell, alright? Like, people that know me, if I think I was any more different, I'd be the cringiest person ever. Some days I think I am. But anyway, Matt Smith's era is definitely my favorite of the New Who eras. So far, granted, we still have to do the Capaldi era. I haven't even started that yet. Ugh. So, we'll see. But Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, is my Doctor. And the important thing about, quote-unquote, your Doctor is that it does help shape what you look for in other Doctors, which incarnations sort of work best with you. So my love of the 11th Doctor tends to shape my appreciation for other Doctors. The 7th Doctor, specifically, and even the 2nd Doctor, who Matt Smith said he based his performance largely on Patrick Troughton's Doctor. So there's that. And it goes a bit further down the rabbit hole the further you go down there. So anyway, let's talk about this Doctor. And really, when I came to Doctor Who, I sort of felt the idea that the 11th Doctor was, in essence, really where the Doctor in New Who is telling one big story. And we never really had that before in Doctor Who. So usually we have stories that exist within that incarnation's life. We'll see opposition and enemies that incarnation will only meet. In other words, like for example, up until Giggle, I think we really just associated the Toymaker with the First Doctor. Even going into the audios where the Toymaker is a Sixth Doctor enemy. And even then you have the Valyard is primarily a Sixth Doctor antagonist. We look at, say, Castrovalva as pretty much a Fifth Doctor, even Omega as a 3 and 5 antagonist, or the 7th Doctor and Fenric, or the 8th Doctor and Rassilon, or even specific incarnations of the Master are exclusive to certain incarnations of the Doctor for the most part. Like, I don't think anyone really expects to see Delgado's Master against anyone but John Pertwee. I mean, that would just sort of be weird. Not a bad idea, but just, like, the rapport wouldn't be the same. And we see that as well with, say, the Satan Pit for the 10th Doctor, or I guess Rassilon? But then again, Rassilon's everyone's problem. The more you know about Doctor Who, the less you trust Rassilon. But when looking at the 11th Doctor's era, I definitely got the feeling that there was definitely this sort of idea of the Doctor as a character going through one big story that started with the 9th Doctor and culminated really with the 12th Doctor, which may be why later incarnations like the 13th Doctor seem to struggle a bit. We're so used to this sort of big story, whether we acknowledge it or not. 11's era has a lot of finality to it. There's a sort of idea that this is the last incarnation, which is sort of weird when you think about it, because Eccleston didn't decline to return until Moffat was really starting to plan out Day of the Doctor. And with that in mind, even if you add the Meta-Crisis Doctor, you would still have him be the... Why do I get the numbering wrong? He'd be the 12th Doctor, alright? But the Doctor regenerates 12 times, so that'd be 13 Doctors. So there still would have been one more. Now maybe Moffat always had this idea in his head, and Eccleston just sort of worked his way to it. But Moffat had this sort of era of finality to his Doctor, to the 11th Doctor, that did sort of work with the idea that he was the last incarnation. There's a lot of big speeches in 11's era. There's a lot of sense of, this ends with me here. Alright, and a lot of his era is dealing with his legend. Alright, we have enemies that turn and run at the just mere mention of his name, as we see in A Good Man Goes to War. We see that even just the 11th Hour when he addresses the Atraxi, and they've got a whole file on him. All of that sort of culminates in this idea that the Doctor that this incarnation is the last. And that is both fun and a bit stressful at times. Well, really is a bit inconsistent. Moffat sort of stumbled his way into that by Eccleston declining to return so we could add another incarnation. Also, as much as I like this era, I also do tend to think that this era could have been mostly rewritten. There's a lot of story points that just don't quite work in my mind, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about the companions, and then we'll go into, well, the Doctor himself. All right. So yeah, here we. How did this work again? Do we do this? Oh, look at that. Okay.
Amy.
Hi. Oh, this is Rory. He's a friend.
Boyfriend.
Kind of boyfriend.
Amy.
Hello, sweetie.
Rory Williams is an interesting take on a companion. In a lot of ways, you can compare him to Mickey Smith from the Russell T Davies era and from the 9th and 10th Doctor's era, in the essence that he is what I would call a +1 companion, in the sense that he wasn't really chosen to be in the TARDIS, although the 9th Doctor does offer him a ride in the TARDIS at some point. His relationship to the Doctor and his reason for being there are really because of another companion. And this is a bit different than saying, hey, we should come along. It's more the fact that, for the longest time, the reason this companion's here is because of his relationship to another one. Both Mickey and Rory are here because of their love interest. And I think Rory is a better take on Mickey in some areas and a worse take in other areas. And it's really one scene. Ultimately, I think the best version of Rory is in Big Finish with the character Hex. If you've heard Big Finish, you've heard me talk about Hex. Yeah, I think he's the best possible version of Rory. And the reason I say that is, even in Rory's introductory episode, he really is just sort of... Amy is hesitant to really introduce him properly. And that is sort of in line with Amy's character and the direction they're going to go for with that story. But outside of the jokes, which Arthur Darvill does expertly, like he really does handle those jokes well, the other joke really is outside of his constant dying. We're gonna roll that clip. the Kenny of Doctor Who, and I thought it'd be Captain Jack. But anyway, really, with Rory, you always have to sum him up as one thing. This is Amy's husband. This was Amy's boyfriend. This was Amy's fiancé. Outside of death, he is defined best by being Amy's love interest. That's kind of it. And while the show has done, I think, a good job of showing, well, a job of showing why Amy likes Rory, hence in the story, The Girl Who Waited, I don't think it's done a good job explaining why Rory likes Amy, other than she's pretty. And I know Rory's not that shallow, and maybe some expanded material does do that, but in the confines of the show, it's never been done. Rory will be, actually, sadly, Rory will be the best male companion until, ironically, the Whittaker era. And, yeah, weird. But Rory is a great source of fun and entertainment. He brings a certain human aspect of being the sort of outsider to the Doctor-companion dynamic, which for New Who has always been two people. The Doctor and his female companion. Or just companion, depending on how you want to go about it. And usually in Doctor Who, even when there's multiple companions, there usually is one dynamic that stands out the most. And a good example would be the second Doctor and Jamie. Even with Zoe and Victoria, his best friend was Jamie. And it's a bit sad, because even while Mickey had that for the longest time, by the time he was traveling with the 10th Doctor, we got a little look into his history, namely his relationship with his grandmother, him meeting his other self, a better version of himself, arguably. In School Reunion, we see him sort of realize what he wants to be. He doesn't want to be the person sitting behind with the dog. He wants to get out there. Didn't really matter at the end of the day. With Rory, there is something to be said that Rory doesn't really care about traveling about, seeing new places and whatnot. He just wants a normal life, which he clearly got from his dad, Arthur Weasley. That is still one of the coolest things ever in Doctor Who, that Arthur Weasley's here. The problem is, though, because his defining trait isn't really, I want a normal life, it's, I'm in love with Amy. Isn't everything he does, 9 times out of 10, is about Amy. And so, while that can be endearing, it also doesn't leave much to it, especially when you're Stephen Moffat. Like, as much as I love Stephen Moffat's ideas, his weakest aspect in my mind has always been characters and payoff. Or I think his payoff doesn't always work. But he has a lot of really great ideas. Like, if you wanted to fuse Russell with anyone, it'd be Stephen Moffat for those ideas. But when it comes to characters, bless his heart, he tries. And the reason I want to focus on this picture here, Dinosaurs on the Spaceship, it's because, really, Rory's relationship with his dad is just sort of played up for laughs. I think Rory doesn't want to be his dad, but at the same time, he also would be totally okay with it. Like, he doesn't realize he is his dad. So, there's that. But you think about it, there's not much here for Rory to go off of. Pretty much Rory's best character moments are about Amy. Everything about him goes right back to Amy. And it's a bit depressing when you think about it. Like I said, Mickey has other things. Mickey has dreams, aspirations. I think there's a part of him that does want to be like the Doctor. Maybe you want to take pride in the fact that Rory's comfortable in his own skin enough. But at the end of the day, he's also burdened with insecurities. Like, Rory does realize that he is not Amy's first choice, I guess. I think he lives with that a lot. And it doesn't help, again, that Stephen Moffat keeps hammering this home. So, for the first season, when, after the whole events of Flesh and Stone, where, Amy forces herself on the 11th Doctor, the Doctor's like, I'm not doing this again. No, I'm going to go get your fiancé. And Rory's sort of left with the fact that, her imaginary friend is in her life, and they're older, and she seems to flirt with him. He was a bit insecure in the beginning, and sort of early days for the three of them, sure. Rory was right to be concerned, like, so you decided to travel indefinitely the night before our wedding. Yeah, I'd be concerned too, honestly. Like, Amy didn't think it was a problem, but it's clearly a problem. And then we look at something like, say, Cold Blood, or not even Cold Blood, The Hungry Earth. We see him go right back to the idea that, Amy, if you lose Amy, then what good are you? And Amy will say the same thing in Amy's Choice. What's the point of you if you can't keep Amy/Rory safe? But at the same time, if you look at something like, say, um, Day of the Moon, all right, we go back to Roy's insecurities. Both Amy's Choice and Day of the Moon sort of bring up the fact that Rory is insecure that Amy loves the Doctor, all right, and loves the Doctor more than him. And it is a bit sad in that way, but that's also primarily on Amy's fault. Because the 11th Doctor is just a big kid. He doesn't really consider things like romance and intimacy and kissing. So it is really him not getting it, but at the same time, he's not thinking of it. So there's that. Rory, on the other hand, gets it. The Doctor is amazing. He's smooth. He's cool. He's everything Rory isn't. So Rory, by default, is a bit intimidated by that, and Amy doesn't help. All right? And there's a reason why in Asylum of the Daleks he dares to say, like, I love you more than you love me. Amy disagrees with that, and we'll discuss that later, I promise, when we get to Amy. But it's hard to not see there's some truth to that, to some level. At the same time, though, Rory is a nurse, and the story does like to play up that angle in the fact that he usually is someone who interacts with people a bit more. I mean, to be a nurse, you have to have some degree of people skills, all right? And we look at something like, say, The Rebel Flesh, where he bonds with one of the gangers, and the original, it's weird on that one, where he tries to really handle the mom in the Hungry Earth story. Like, he tries to really communicate with her. He does sort of like try to bond with people. Honestly, I think Rory's best standout moment is his performance in The Pandorica Opens. Oh, look at that. We didn't plan that. That's cool. And, of course, The Girl Who Waited, where he does sort of have it out with the Doctor. And actually, both those stories is him having some sort of argument with the Doctor, some sort of disagreement, some sort of near falling out. And I really do think that would be an interesting way to go. But I think it's also fun to sort of think that at the end of the day, Rory trusts the Doctor, possibly even a bit more than Amy does, because they both sort of understand what it's like to be that close to Amy. And both, it's also weird because it still goes back to the same thing. Rory's dedication to Amy. The Pandorica Opens in the Big Bang reveals to us that Rory waited 2,000 years just to make sure Amy was safe. And he brings it up in Asylum of the Daleks again. In The Girl Who Waited, he's furious at the idea of how much time they missed with Amy, and how much time was effectively stolen from him and Amy. So it's sort of like a weird thing with Rory and Amy. Like, it's his defining trait, but every now and then, when Moffat isn't focusing on the incessant love triangle that the Doctor doesn't want to be in, Amy doesn't really want to be in, but Rory also feels like if he wasn't here, something would happen, which would be irrelevant if you think about it. Rory's saying that if he didn't exist, she'd be with the Doctor. I'm like, but you wouldn't exist. But that's irrelevant. It's hard. Really, in a lot of ways, Rory is sort of Mickey's insecurities brought to the front and constantly teased to the audience. And as I said before, Rory wants that simple life, and Moffat likes to do that with his male companions, if you think about it, because he'll do the same thing with Danny Pink in the Capaldi era. Like, I don't quite... Does Moffat not like male companions? I don't think Russell does either. I mean, really. I mean, we mentioned all the redhead companions, Mel, Donna, Amy, and we just skipped Turlo. Like, whatever. Next is Dr. Professor River Song. So, I have a love-hate relationship with River. I think in moments when the mystery isn't played up about River, I think she works better. When she's played up as more so as the Doctor's near equal, as opposed to the jokes like, oh, you just didn't know, or, you left the break song when that doesn't matter. Or when they're back and forth, is played a bit more as equals. Like, as much as I sort of buck a bit of the whole leaving the break song, because that never comes up again. As River tries to explain, like, well, we gotta check out the planet, the Doctor goes out, like, nah, the planet's fine, let's go. That's fun. Their scene in The Day of the Moon, when they're sort of flirting, I think that is fun too, because it also speaks like this weird thing about the 11th Doctor. He doesn't quite figure out how to be normal, but when he does, it sort of works out. Or maybe just because of how strange River is as a character. Alright, River is this sort of femme fatale character. Like, and when we saw her in Silence of the Library, we didn't quite understand exactly that. We got the implication that she was special to the Doctor. Here we sort of get confirmation exactly who she is. And the problem is, when that mystery's played up too much, pretty much whatever we have in our mind will never be as good as the actual truth. In a lot of ways, maybe we sort of beat this to death. Maybe Moffat sort of beat the mystery of River Song to death, and her character and the overall story suffered for it. That's a debatable discussion. But the problem with River is sort of the same problem that we had with Rory, in the fact that while Rory's entire character is about Amy, River's entire character is focused on the Doctor. And the more we find out about it, the more that sort of makes sense. But there's a problem with that, i.e. River's parents are Amy and Rory. And they don't really have an interesting rapport with that. It's like every now and then River will make a reference to it, but it's sort of not it. It's sort of like in Disney's Little Mermaid remake when Ursula mentions, "Oh, King Triton's my brother," and that really doesn't matter. Like, outside of A Good Man Goes to War and it's a couple of scant scenes, does that familial bond really matter? Or is it really played up in a sort of interesting way? I don't think so. I think for some people maybe it is enough. But for me, no. And in terms of expanded works with River, I think the problem is I need to listen to this one. The problem with the Diary of River song is that while the idea of it is pretty much Big Finish telling her, hey, Alex Kingston, River Song, she's a time traveler who's in love with the Doctor. Let's just make it so we're going to confirm she's in love with the Doctor as a whole. Which makes her, gives her a bigger leg up than I would say Rose does. Because Rose really loves the 10th Doctor. River's entire story in the Diary of River Song is her meeting different Doctors and loving them. Or she loves each incarnation. Like the fact that she's flirting with the 7th Doctor, to me, says everything. Alright, just that one is wild. She's met the War Doctor, she's met the 9th Doctor, she has an outing with the 4th Doctor, the 6th Doctor, the 8th Doctor. There's a lot with the 8th Doctor. I don't know why. But this one here seems, I haven't listened to it yet, but just going by the cover, we have Melody Pond, or Melody Williams, it's weird, and Madame Kavarian. So we have an exploration to that dynamic, that relationship. Something independent of Amy, Rory, and the Doctor. Although it's weird because all three of them are about the Doctor. Melody reveals that she was there to kill the Doctor. River actually kills the Doctor. Madame Kavarian orchestrates the plan to kill the Doctor. So yeah, it's weird in its own way. It doesn't quite work out. But early in the mystery, I did like it. The problem with River has always been when that mystery is solved, what do we do with her? Because we know where her destiny lies, where she's headed, which is the library, where she'll be trapped. And Moffat can't quite seem to let her go. The Big Finish wants to go, like, here's what she did in between all of that. Alright? The whole Deryllium thing. There's a short with her and the 11th Doctor where they're going to Deryllium. And then Moffat goes, actually, they didn't do it. He changed his mind. He couldn't do it. They had to go somewhere. Couldn't do it. And then he saves it for the Husbands of River Song. So that was weird in its own way. Outside of all the innuendo and the sort of badassery, really what River is sort of a person who's lost her childhood. And there's something sad and tragic about that, in the sense that, you know, she was taken to kill a man she would fall in love with. Alright? And she's had to keep this whole secret the whole time. And it's sad and tragic, but at the end of the day, there's also something else about River. River is Stephen Moffat's fan insert. It's kind of it. Now, you could argue most companions are fan inserts. Like, they're always, like, this is what I would be if I was a companion. Because, you know, every now and then, you realize, I'm not the Doctor. I'd be a companion, and you'd go from there. But you want to be the cool companion. The one who's not just there for one. You want to be like Sarah Jane, meets Romana, meets Jamie, you know, and with Ace, you want to beat up a Dalek with a baseball bat. You want to be Rose Tyler, melting the Dalek Emperor. Like, you know, you want to be cool. Alright? Captain Jack and Rose and River Song are, in essence, the same character. Alright? They're characters who travel through time. seemingly live forever. Jack for immortality. River because the timeline's all messed up. Highly competent. Knows a thing or two. May or may not be as smart as the Doctor on some level. Flirty. A bit promiscuous. Getting laid. I.e. the joke about, Doctor Who fans, they don't get laid. And, obsessed with the Doctor. Captain Jack had a crush on the Ninth Doctor, and totally loved the 10th Doctor, and really, really liked the 13th Doctor. And River loves all the Doctors. She's had stories with just about all of them. So there's that. Even more so when you think about River's love and appreciation for the Doctor is like that of a hyper fan. Right? Because she knows all of them. She knows all these other adventures that the Doctor doesn't know, or that the audience doesn't know about. She's that hyper fan. Like, no, I know about this story here. Asgard, Jim the Fish, all of that. River's that fan. She's not just watches the show, she reads the novels, has the audios, pointing a gun at my forehead. It's all there. And the problem is, because River does so much, there's not much to her, but there is some sort of fun little moments that I do like. We'll go, of course, to her scene, her sort of breakdown in The Husbands of River Song, where she talks about what it means to be in love with the Doctor. But her conversation with Rory, as a matter of fact, this scene here as well, is a great River Rory moment, even though we don't quite get what their rapport is. Like, Rory's like, this is my daughter, I don't really feel anything, I don't get to feel anything. He's more like, we know who she becomes, she'll be fine. I'm like, but you held her like 5 minutes ago, and now you see her as a full adult. You've missed the entire thing. So I don't quite get that. But her conversation with Rory about what it is to be in love with the Doctor, how there's someone who knows everything about you, or you know everything about them, and they don't quite recognize you, or that what that does to a girl. And Roy, like as usual, brings this to Amy. We see the scene where she fights all the silence, and the headcanon theory is River's. When River turns away from the silence, she should remember the silence, but she sees something scared her dad, and so she knew whatever scared her dad had to die. So it's sweet, it's tender, not much to it, but there is something to be said about that possible theory. And you know what, I support it. And of course there's a scene in A Good Man Goes to War where River sees Roy dressed in the Centurion clothes, and in a lot of ways she's like, that's my dad. Like, this is her dad. In the sense that, yeah, in a couple years, you'll be my dad. Yeah, sure. But this is the day. This is the day that, she was born and her dad held her. This is when he really became her dad. So she's had that little moment. It's great. But then that's sort of ruined by them going back to River and the Doctor, River and the Doctor, River and the Doctor. I'm like, can we just let these three be these three? Like, at some point, I'm pretty sure there should be a story where River goes back to meet her parents, right after the Angels take Manhattan. There's no reason for that not to be there. Yeah, that's sort of how I feel about it. But also, remember, at the end of the day, these two characters are the same, alright? The only difference is, one is welcomed back in Doctor Who. She just won't be because no one really wants to write for River Song. At least for TV. I don't think who else is going to bring her back. And the more I hear about what John Barrowman did, and I've never even heard the full story, it just gets worse. It's worse. It just gets worse and worse. So next we have
Fine. Off with him.
Amy, please. Just come back into the TARDIS. Come, please.
Broken man. Goodbye.
In fact, you know what? Run. Run, you clever boy. And remember me.
When I think of Amy and Amelia Pond, I can't help but think of Peter Pan. And Amy is in a lot of ways one part Wendy, one part Lost Boy, in the sense that there's this big promise of fun and adventure at a young age that never really comes true, and Amy is sort of forced to grow up. And what's interesting about that is because she never really got to have those adventures, she does, in essence, buckle a bit at it. A lot of Amy's story is about her growing up and sort of having that childhood she never got to have. And it's a weird idea to look at it that way, but I think that is sort of how we're supposed to examine it through the text, or the film itself. Like, a lot of what Amy's doing is, well, let's sort of rehash where we are post Amelia Pond and the time skip, all right, courtesy of the TARDIS, which is a great way to do a time skip, actual time travel, love it. We see Amy having some sort of commitment issues, like she really is dealing with issues of abandonment. As we find out later, her family makes no sense, like her aunt isn't actually never there, her parents are just gone. And what's interesting about that is, as we later see in, say, Day of the Moon, we see what happens when people are exposed to silence for a long time. So in a lot of ways, it almost feels like Moffat was pointing out that the Kavarian chapter was behind the whole issues with Amy's parents. As a matter of fact, that kind of is what's greatly implied. I think it's just sort of underplayed throughout the series. But with that in mind, we see Amy's abandonment issues, which lead to her commitment problems when it comes to Rory. As we saw before, she has trouble even pointing out that Rory is her boyfriend and later her fiancé, and that she is marrying him the next day. Although that night, she plans to go on eternal adventures with the Doctor, not even bringing her boyfriend with her or her fiancé with her. And this is sort of her way of, sort of creating that distance between the two things. And over the course of the series, we do get not necessarily ideas that Amy herself actually has feelings for the 11th Doctor, although I think that is possible. I think in reality the issue is Amy attaches the 11th Doctor because with the 11th Doctor she doesn't have to grow up. She doesn't have to. Going off all these adventures, in a lot of ways, her escapism. Because in a lot of ways, Amy is dealing with the idea that, at some point she's going to be abandoned. And Moffat sort of stumbles with it here and there for the most part. Really, it is her commitment to Rory, which is sort of there, but not there. And it's not really Amy's fault, minus this scene here.
Hard even you can understand.
Look, you're getting married in the morning.
Well, the morning's a long time away. What are we going to do about that?
Amy, listen to me. I am 907 years old. Do you understand what that means?
It's been a while.
Yeah, no. I'm 907, and look at me. I don't get older. I just change. You get older. I don't, and this can't ever work.
Oh, you are sweet, Doctor, but I really wasn't suggesting anything quite so long-term.
So even later, Moffat sort of admitted that this was a bad scene. You really shouldn't have written it this way. I think really a simple kiss would have made this seem less terrible, especially considering what Amy went through before. I think that would have worked out, but here it's just her forcing herself on the Doctor. And she doesn't really bring it up again, so that's sort of weird. And as we go through the series, we do see she is wholly committed to Rory. She just has trouble sort of communicating it. A lot of times she goes for the grand gestures, like, the big kisses and whatnot. She really isn't... She doesn't seem to be capable of doing the small, big commitment issues, that comes with it. Like, actually stating, I'm here. If you want to stop traveling with the Doctor, I'll stop traveling with the Doctor. That's sort of it. I think Rory's always been afraid of, if he had to make Amy choose, she would choose the Doctor. Amy doesn't want to have to choose. But when push comes to shove, she will always pick Rory. Alright? Hence the episode Amy's Choice, which also reveals a sort of weird perspective that the Doctor has about Amy. But what's also fun about that is... Well, not necessarily fun about that is, but one thing I've always had in my mind is that, for the most part, the way Moffat writes his companions, they don't work well in trios. Like, we like 11, Rory, and Amy, but we really like Amy and Rory. We like 11 and Amy. We like 11 and Rory. We don't really like 11, Amy, and Rory. We don't like the trio. We like this weird duos that Moffat sometimes gives us. It's sort of like his strength. He's better suited to one Doctor, one companion, and go from there. And as I was thinking about it, about Amy's sort of role in the series, like she sort of takes the role of one part Donna, one part Martha, in the sense that, you know, she is trying to figure out her place in the world, and she is sort of set herself up to be the Doctor's best friend. And I like that, I do, but I think a really good thing is the slow way the Doctor sort of tries to move Amy towards Rory. Like, he knows this is where she needs to be, this is where she'll be the happiest. It's sort of helping her grow up. And that works. I think that's a really cool way to look at the sort of role of an imaginary friend. Like, you know, they're there to help you get you through the sort of dark and uncomfortable times in your life, and at some point you will leave them alone. And Amy has trouble just saying goodbye to that because, well, first of all, why should she? Alright? Yeah, the Doctor's an impossible man, but he exists. He's real. He travels around all of time and space. And she's the one most invested, I think, in the Doctor's life, in terms of things that happen to him. Hence something like the Impossible Astronaut, and her conflicted ideas like, hey, should we tell the Doctor, should we not, about his upcoming death. She's willing to shoot a child, who turns out to be her daughter, to save the Doctor. She helps join the Church of the Silence, not knowing it's the Church of the Silence, to save him in the Wedding of River Song. She talks to the Hitler robot with the Tessellect, like, hey, you'll give my best friend whatever he needs on his dying day, and go from there. It's sweet, it's tender, and by the end of it, they do become best friends, in the sense that she becomes that companion to the Doctor. So the Doctor always has a specific companion that sort of is able to sort of communicate with him better. I think Moffat and other writers sort of mess it up a bit, where instead of the sort of, I think, the actual conversation that Amy would have, it tend to be played up for laughs, like in A Town Called Mercy. But ultimately, I think it works. If you look at something like, say, Victory of the Daleks and The Beast Below, where the Doctor is sort of looking at only one way, and Amy comes like, well, there's another way. There's a different way. A way that he would, you know, sort of figure out on his own, but because he's not in the right headspace, he's not seeing it. You know, to think of, hey, trusting in the Beast Below, trusting in the Space Whale, the Star Whale. Which one is it? Star Whale. And that, hey, you just let it go, it'll be fine. The Doctor more likely would think of that, but in a post-Time War Doctor, no, he's not going to think that. When he talks to the Doctor who made the Daleks, he tries to talk about, hey, talk about how, you know, you hate the Daleks and whatnot, and she's like, no, think about love and whatnot, and go from there, and that helps him be human. It's a fun idea, showing like how even as goofy as this Doctor is, he still carries the weight of the Time War, the weight of all the loss he's had, and it does make him less effective to some extent, and the companions help him remember that. I love this scene here because it is sort of showing the Doctor's commitment to making sure Amy has, you know, the best foot forward. And this is in line with the Doctor's personality to begin with. You know, the 10th Doctor leaving a lottery ticket for Donna, which Donna gets rid of because I guess Russell hates rich people, or maybe he thought that was too happy an ending. And then he writes Giggle, and everyone gets exactly what they want. Stupid. But there's a scene where, like in, say, The Power of Three, where the Doctor talks about how, you know, he keeps visiting because he knows that Amy and Rory are having their own lives. There are days they don't want to travel with the Doctor. They want to, you know, be a married couple. They want to be here. This is sort of what would happen if the Doctor traveled with Ian and Barbara, alright? And after Ian and Barbara get home, or something close to home, and, like, hey, the Doctor comes in like, hello, Chestertons! Would you like to come along? Actually, he really wouldn't. He really wouldn't. Not the first Doctor, anyway. But, you know, they would live that married life. And so some days, like, actually, no. Ian and Barbara like to teach. They like their day-to-day lives as much as they like traveling with the Doctor. Well, provided they know there's a way to get home. So there's that back and forth there, and the Doctor has to sort of find a way to fit into his life. Really what's happening is the Doctor is slowly making it so Amy and Rory don't need him anymore, and as much as that hurts, he knows that's for the best. Especially this Doctor, in the sort of I've ruined everyone else's life around me. So this is a rare chance to sort of watch them grow, watch them thrive, and Amy. It's appropriate that despite the Doctor trying that, and the Doctor being encouraged to and you travel with them all you want. When Arthur Weasley says it's okay. But the fact that Amy's story ends with her doing what she always does, which is pick Rory. All right, in the episode Amy's Choice, when she has a choice of hey, we could stay in this world where we're alive and go to another world where Rory isn't definitely dead. She picks a world where Rory isn't dead. In the episode The Black Spot, she sort of embraces the role of being Rory's caregiver. Hey, you know what? I'm going to take care of Rory. That's her role. That's what she's trying to do, what she's moving into. In, I think, The Rebel Flesh and Almost People, she is kind of jealous of the ganger that hangs around Rory. Nothing ever comes from it. In A Good Man Goes to War, we see her talking, when she's talking to Baby Melody, we think she's talking about the Doctor, this great hero. She's talking about Rory. The Girl Who Waited, both Amy's talk about Rory and how amazing he is, how wonderful he is, and how he's beautiful on the inside. That's what makes him so beautiful on the outside, which I guess explains it. Whatever. It's nice to know that, though. And I wish we'd gotten it from Rory. What was the moment Rory realized he was in love with Amy? Amy makes it sound like she's always been in love with Rory, and that's sweet. And of course, this all culminates in The Angels Take Manhattan, where when Rory's touched by an angel and he's gone, Amy would rather take the risk of finding this one way to see, this 1 in a million shot to see Rory again, than to go through life never having him in her life. Rather than go another day without Rory, she'll take that risk. And that's sweet. Amelia Pond, Amy Williams, is a companion that I think in her tenure, it just didn't work out well. But I think as we go through and look at her story a bit more, time is a bit more on her side. And I think that is worth examining. She's a companion who feels left behind by the Doctor, the sort of other lost boy. And as she sees the Doctor as a great big hero and one moment's promise of everything, she slowly starts to see this is just a big kid. This is Peter Pan. And Peter Pan will always travel with Wendy, but at some point Wendy has to say goodbye. Wendy has to be willing to grow up. And what's cool about this is often discussed on a bigger level, is that Peter Pan guides Wendy to that. Other stories, of course, he's killing the kids before they grow too old. Otherwise, they'll become pirates. It's a weird thing. I've never read Peter Pan. Someone make a note. I need to read Peter Pan. Overall, Amy and the Doctor is sort of one of my favorite Doctor companion dynamics. But really, when we remove the love triangle drama, it just stops. So for my rewrite of Amy and Roy, it really would be season 5 ends with this huge will they won't they sort of thing. And Amy knows Rory's going to propose to her, but she's not sure if she wants that. You can even say that night, she knows she's supposed to meet Rory, and she knows Rory's going to propose, and she's afraid. So the season ends with Amy proposing to Rory. I think that would be more interesting. So Amy taking that commitment step, and then season 5 ends with Amy and Rory actually getting married. So the wedding of River Song has the actual wedding of Amy and Rory. I think that works. If you like it or not. And as much as I don't like the divorce and the signing of the Dalek, it does sort of show how selfless Amy is when it comes to Rory in her own way. The fact that I think she feels Rory's given her so much that if she can't give Rory everything he needs, or she feels he needs, she has to give him away. She knows Rory wants children. She knows Rory wants to be a parent. And for some reason she can't. I guess whatever the silence did to her, with the ganger and the whatnot, made it so she couldn't have any more children. So she says, I can't give you that, so I let you go. Why don't we just adopt? And they end up adopting anyway later on, so it's weird. But anyway, there is that, and I think you can go with it that way. Like, how you fit River in, that's your own choice. You could have it, you could have it be an older Amy. The Doctor ends up going to Demon's Run and ends up saving an older Amy, and go from there, or whatever, or just do the real thing. Like, hey, Amy proposed, they're engaged. Oh no, Amy's pregnant before she's married, but it doesn't matter. They're engaged. It's fine. They were gonna get married anyway. There you go. Overall, like I said, I like Amy. I like Rory. I simp for Karen Gillan. I'll admit it. But overall, I think she's a fun companion when written well, and as long as it's not the over flirting and just sort of the spunk, I think she works better. Next is Clara Oswald, or Oswin Oswald, or Clara Oswin. Something really, if you think about it. Clara's an interesting companion because she's introduced in the later half of season 7, and I hate split seasons. Don't do them again, people. But what's interesting about Clara is she's always set up as a mystery first and a companion second. And it's sort of hard for that not to be the thing, because Clara's introduced as first a one-of character in Asylum of the Daleks. I think a really good episode. And then we see her again in The Snowman, played by, well, the same actress. Oswin Oswald in Asylum of the Daleks, Clara Oswin in The Snowman, and the Doctor's like, it's the same girl. It's the same girl. That doesn't happen. And then he meets Clara Oswald, and so the Doctor's now obsessed with his memory, with his mystery, and the Doctor loves the mystery. This goes all the way back to his first incarnation, alright? You put a mystery in front of him, and I hate to tell you this, we're not leaving the planet. We're not. Like, we should leave, but we're not. And first of all, I'll say it, Victorian Clara was best Clara. Like, as much as I just love Oswin Oswald, I think it's the red. Oh my god. And as much as I enjoy Clara Oswald, I think I enjoy her more in the Capaldi era. That's because that's a whole different direction for her character. Actually, no. Season 7B Clara is still the one. Yeah. But Victorian Clara was best girl, and she should have been the companion. Like, all we had to do was move it around a bit and go with Oswin Oswald and just switch modern Clara with Victorian Clara. Nothing really changes. Apparently that was the original intention, but apparently it was too hard to write. I don't, whatever, okay. So, the mystery of Clara is sort of the problem with Clara. So, in purely the Matt Smith era, in Season 7B, the mystery of Clara is sort of all that matters. There's some fun little bits here and there, some interesting relationship dynamics, but it always comes right back to the same thing. What is Clara? Outside of the person who is in love with the 11th Doctor. Alright, like, I know we try to act like it didn't happen. I know Deep Breath was him going like, Clara, I'm not your boyfriend. Like, I know. I'm like, this one isn't, but I remember that short that I think if I show it here, it's going to be just like one clip too many. But she's pretty much saying, like, she has fallen in love with the 11th Doctor. And I guess Moffat just sort of like, well, it's over now. I think it's really just... I think it's also because at that point, you could say by the whole time of the Doctor, Clara jumping into the Doctor's time stream and meeting all his incarnations, her relationship has sort of gone past the idea of just being in love with him. Like, the idea of a romantic relationship just doesn't seem feasible because she's seen too much of the Doctor's timeline. And I think that's a fun inverse to River, who sees more of the Doctor and falls more in love. This one has sort of realized that relationship has sort of transcended that. And that could be a case for the idea of the Doctor, or of Clara being someone else. As a matter of fact, Moffat will play around with that, with the whole Clara saying Clara Oswald has never existed. Some people thought for a moment that Clara was the Master, Clara was the Ronnie, Clara was Susan, Clara was Jenny, Clara was the Doctor's mother. That one is unnecessary, because there's been a lot of making out between Clara and the Doctor, and to reveal that that was his mother would just be... Even the Targaryens wouldn't. Also, Matt Smith is Daemon Targaryen. Love it. But I think Jenna Coleman is sort of like a good she's like Matt Smith in the sense that more than the writing, her performance, like Matt Smith, is the best thing about the episode they're in, and I think that carries it. And I'd have loved more 11 and Clara stories. If you read the other Doctor novel, there's some really fun stuff there. I know there's some other stuff too, but I think Clara works. I think, yeah, season set, like the mystery of Clara sort of ruins the enjoyment of Clara sometimes. We see her interaction with kids, which plays off of her later idea that she teaches, which kind of came out of nowhere, but Clara wasn't doing anything else, so whatever. We see she has a good rapport with people. Clara's a very easy person to talk to, and I think that sort of helps it out. I think she sort of went a bit too far in Nightmare in Silver, but whatever. And of course, later on, there's some episodes in the Capaldi era that I don't remember too fondly liking, but that's more Moffat and the overimportance of Clara Oswald, which, you know, she jumped in the Doctor's timeline, she helps the Doctor, you know, pick a TARDIS, which that scene to me never made sense, because there should be more security on people stealing broken time machines, because it's not like they're broken and that they don't work, they're just broken, so I don't know. But overall, the Matt Smith, Jenna Coleman is one of my favorite dynamics in Doctor Who. It might be more fun for me than 11 and Amy, but I don't know. It's a coin flip for me. Overall, I do like the rapport they have. It is a bit, I think, reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland in some aspect, where the Doctor, in this case, is the Mad Hatter. All right, he's going through, and, you know, Clara, as Alice, goes down the rabbit hole that is the Doctor's timeline, and it goes from there. Or am I just really remembering the Johnny Depp Alice in Wonderland where they would? I don't know. I just don't. We've lost the plot here. Overall, though, I do like Clara. I just think it's sort of hard to wrap the head around her a bit much. She's a character that I think thrives more on the performance than anything else. I promise.
The GOAT! The GOAT!
So it was sort of interesting going from the 11th Doctor's era and going down the rabbit hole of his other incarnations, and I realized I like them goofy, but also with a great deal of sadness to them. So 11 isn't like your 9 or 10, which are these very cool, confident, you know, I lean against the wall and just sort of wait for the stuff to happen with my leather jacket. Like, you know, always have the cool thing to say. Like, you know, the ladies love me. I'm your yummy doctor. The 11th Doctor isn't really that. He really is just sort of like one step away from being cringe in my mind, but he wears it so well. To me, what works about that is I don't need a cool doctor like your Peter Davisons, your David Tennants, because to me the premise of Doctor Who's already cool. Alright, I don't need more of something that really is unnecessary. Alright, I need a guy that's kind of just gonna be a nerd. Like, I need him to fall over. I need him to sort of be easily to dismiss. Alright, those are your 2s, your 4s, your 7s. Technically, it's also the 5th Doctor. But they're characters you ignore at your own peril. Alright, you look at the 2nd Doctor, just dropped Cyberman at the drop of a hat. You look at the 7th Doctor, who's battling cosmic gods and whatnot, while playing the spoons and, like, you know, delaying Ragnarok and whatnot. I hope I rolled those R's correctly. Sylvester does it brilliantly. And 11 is the one who tricks the Silence into ordering their own execution. He's the one who tells you good men don't need rules. Today is not the day to find out why I have so many. He's someone who doesn't quite understand what to do with all of these sort of very grown-up emotions like anger and fury. And so his only response is to, I'm going to humiliate you. Alright, look at Colonel Runaway. Like, I want them to call you Colonel Runaway. I want you to give the order to run away. Alright, I want them to call you that. Alright? At the same time, he has a sort of, like, innocence to him. Like, this is the Doctor that works best with kids. This is the Doctor that has a great rapport with them. When you think of the Doctor as an imaginary friend, that is Matt Smith's Doctor. Alright? Like 9 and 10 are these cool older brothers you have. All your friends come to visit just to hang out with them. The girl you like, she's really just here to hit on him. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't, alright? But when Matt Smith goes, who the man? And you die a little inside, alright? That's me. I'm the one that when he tries to be cool, it just doesn't work. I just have to be the other thing. Alright? And maybe I seek that validation from Matt Smith. Maybe I seek validation from bow ties and fish fingers and custard, and that's what I look for in an incarnation. This is the character that resonates with me because he is me, minus the brilliance, the skin color, the height, the soccer skills, the football skills, the acting skills, the having Lily James as a girlfriend, having made out, well, having kissed both Karen Gillian and Jenna Coleman and Alex. Yeah, it's just that. Okay, so we're not really alike. But coming back to his character, one thing I liked about him really was not just that sadness, but the sort of refusal to acknowledge things in his past. One thing that he does better than the 10th Doctor is how he processes loss and sadness. So 10 processes sadness by just like, he gets really sad, has that one tear going down, sometimes 2 tears, and then he feels like he shouldn't be traveling anymore. Nah, let's go out and travel. Like, it's a thing. Yeah, yeah, I don't need to admit I'm sad. Yeah, it's good. And that level of denial's fine to an extent, but then he just goes off and just like, hey, I'm traveling with other people. I'm hanging out with other people. Yeah. When Eleven's sad, when he's dealing with loss, he goes into self-exile. He retires. He, like, after losing Amy and Rory, he retires to the Victorian era, finds 3 chuckleheads, Jenny, Vastra, and Strax. I still have to listen to that Paternoster Gang audio. And goes from there. He is determined to not do any of that. When he thinks he's dying, or has to die, or has to say goodbye to someone, he's resolute in not seeing them again. Alright, and there's no, like, hey, this is my subtle attempt at, acting like I don't need to see them by seeing other people. It just sort of happens. Like in The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, yeah, I know, cringe episode. The only reason he helped that family out was because she helped him. It's like, oh, I have to help out. And that was fun. Also showcase more of Matt Smith's energy. Like, if you see me at work, I tend to try to present that energy sometimes. I've also learned to do things with my hands and go there and whatnot. But 11 is sort of very good at sort of bringing a sort of wholesome era to the Doctor, while at the same time bringing that sort of cold darkness to him. Like, this is a character that is trying very hard to sort of go back to being his original self, go back to being that first Doctor. As a matter of fact, that sort of legacy idea, like what the Doctor has become from who he was when he started, is brought up in A Good Man Goes to War, as River points out. Did you ever think that when you left Gallifrey all those years ago that this is what you'd become? Or instead of just someone who's traveling around, there's an army who you've scared away at the mere mention of you. Alright, whether it be the Atraxi or the Colonel Runaway, and they took the daughter of your best friend to engineer against you. Alright, this is what you've become. And we know it's Trenzalore now, but in part it's also just the Doctor's legend as a whole. Think about it. He's gone around and he's stopped all these enemies. Like, there's a greater story to that. There's more details, more milieu, more, more stories in between that. But as far as most people know, the Doctor's defeated Daleks, Cybermen, Sontarans, Silurians, Vord. I'm not sure if he defeated Zagreus, but he dealt with Zagreus. Omega, retrieved Time Lord artifacts. Fenric. These are defeated cosmic gods. Alright? Like, the Satan pit's like a day at the beach for him, really. Survived the Time War. It is sort of impressive, and if you're sort of on the other side, you would start to be afraid of this person. And the Doctor, after seeing everything, courtesy of my sort of Time War theory, where, the reason he looks like a 12-year-old is because after using the moment, after John Hurt, oh gee, I can't do a good John Hurt, pushes the button, regenerates into Christopher Eccleston, younger, trying to get away from the Time War, or trying to really recover from the Time War, trying to get back to a sense of normalcy. What happens then? Dalek Emperor shows up, Time War is back, forced to make another impossible decision between destroying the base, will destroy the Daleks, but also destroy a good number of the humans, if not all of them, and he decides to not push the button. He decides to not do the thing. All right. So what happens? All the stress of that, he returns to David Tennant younger. All right, and he gets the same sort of thing again with the return, with the loss of Rose, an issue with Daleks and Cybermen, and the loss of, well, not the loss of Martha, but what happened with Martha with the Master, and then we see the loss of Donna with Davros, and pretty much the whole idea of the Time War possibly coming back in one form or another with the Metacrisis Doctor. He has to say goodbye to Donna, and we see in the End of Time, where, you know, it's legit the Time War coming back, and the Doctor has to make that choice again. This very grown-up choice. So the 10th Doctor, again, has this great moment where he regenerates into a younger body, a 12-year-old, and this kid does not want to be an adult. All right, he doesn't want to grow up. He's Peter Pan all over again, and it's brilliant. All right, he doesn't quite get that River's flirting with him. He doesn't quite get that, you know, he loves the bunk bed. He doesn't quite get what Amy and Roy want to do, you know, on essentially their honeymoon. In the TARDIS, in their bedroom, like, why don't you want a bunk bed? It's a bed with a ladder. They don't want that. He's like, he didn't get that. It's fun as it, he can't sit still. He's a hyperactive kid. Why? Because if he stops moving, he will remember. He will get sad. And this Doctor hates himself. All right, now I've said that it happened before. There's a bit of self-loathing to the Doctor, all right, and this comes to fruition in Let's Kill Hitler, where he talks, when, you know, he looks at the people whose lives is ruined. Rose Tyler trapped in another dimension, all right. Martha Jones, her family is totally destroyed mentally by the events of what happened in the year that never was. Donna, before Russell ruined that with Giggle, you know, lost all those memories, which pretty much was her entire character arc is gone. So she's not the person she became. She's the person she was before she met the Doctor. Yeah, so there we go. And he can't see her, otherwise she'll die. Then he sees he's messed up Amy. Alright, so yeah, he has not seen anything good he's done. And notice it's all a one-sided argument, because it's easier to point out, it's a very real thing. It's very easy for us to point out all the bad we've done, all the negatives, than it is to look at the good we've done. Especially when it involves other people, especially people we like, especially our friends. So the Doctor sort of doesn't stick his fingers in his ear, but he says, like, we've moved on. We go from, he creates a distance. Alright, that's sort of the point of the War Doctor. The War, or just not, he doesn't call him the Doctor. Alright, he's the one that broke the promise. He's the one that did the thing. And the whole time, he's regenerating younger. He's trying to move away from it physically. Like, he wants to look in the mirror and not see that old man, not see that adult. And it just sort of goes from there. As a matter of fact, a lot of this Doctor goes, we've moved on. Or in the story of, like, the Rebel Flesh, he talks about, hey, we've moved on, we don't talk about it. He doesn't talk about Amy, he doesn't talk about Rose Tyler, unless it's, like, flippantly. In the Wedding of River Song, he's all set to avoid his problems until he finds out the Brigadier has passed away. And that sort of motivates him to face his future. And that's sort of appropriate. I think using a companion for that was a great way to do it, especially for someone as, I know it wasn't, like, the best send-off to Nicholas Courtney, but I think that motivating the Doctor to sort of face his, essentially his fear and his doom, I think made sense. I think that made a degree of sense. And that sort of culminates in Trenzalore. Well, actually, before that, we look at other moments where the Doctor is sort of forced to make those same choices. The Beast Below, the Doctor has to make the choice between, hey, do I let the Star Beast continue, the Star World continue to hurt people, or do I free the Star Beast? Do I just, you know, well, if I free the Star Beast, these people will die. If I let it stay here, it's going to be in immense pain throughout its entire life. So my best bet is to, you know, medically euthanize the patient. All right, make it brain dead. All right, and he's sort of faced with that choice again from the Time War. We see Victor the Daleks, the Dalek Paradigm. We see it in Cold War, when the Doctor make that choice again. That choice keeps coming back to the Doctor, and he hates having to make it. And it works. And then, of course, we see Amy and Rory go away, and the Doctor is trying to move past it by self-isolating. The world is better off without him. And then we come to Name, Day, and Time of the Doctor. Name of the Doctor is the Doctor coming face-to-face with his greatest secret, the War Doctor. Day of the Doctor is him coming to terms with the War Doctor and what he did, and realizing, hey, if I could find a way to undo it. Like, it wasn't a perfect solution to it. I think it would have been better had the Doctor, had the War Doctor not been there for the whole let's save Gallifrey and leave it that way, or Stuart Hardy came up with a great ending for that where Clara makes the look, says, I don't think you should do it, and the Doctor uses the screwdriver, uses the moment, says, this is what will happen if the Time War doesn't end today, and it just shows the Daleks, taking over the sky trenches, destroying Gallifrey, and just wreaking havoc and destruction throughout the universe, and they push the button, and everything goes through there, and whatnot. Then we come to Time of the Doctor, where the 11th Doctor is sort of the man who runs, the man who's always running, and decides to stay and defend Christmas and defend Gallifrey. Alright, and even at the cost of his own life, he will do that. He has decided to stay here and make the home here. He's formed bonds, roots, attachments, and he's generally having a good time. And then we get, of course, the speech at the end.
We all change. When you think about it, we are all different people, all through our lives. And that's okay, that's good, you've got to keep moving, so long as you remember all the people that you used to be. I will not forget one line of this. Not one day. I swear. I will always remember when the Doctor was me.
This is so poignant to the man who says we've moved on, the man who couldn't remember how many children were on Gallifrey that day, saying like we've moved on. He's in a different place now. He's like, no. Everything that happened from the day I left Gallifrey to the Time War, to saying goodbye to Rose, saying goodbye to Martha, saying goodbye to Donna, losing Amy and Rory, I will remember every bit of it. And it works, because what happens next, the 11th Doctor, sort of embracing this new life, his past and everything, regenerates into an older man, into Peter Capaldi. And he's sort of like, hey, it's time I grew up. Yeah, that's sort of it. That's me waxing nostalgically on my favorite Doctor. So, let's see here. One more for the road. Huh? So, for Season 5, my favorite episodes. The 11th Hour, great introduction to Doctor Who as a whole. Very simple. Matt Smith does a great job of selling you as the Doctor. Eccleston had the advantage of just sort of, hey, it's new, all eyes are on me and the mystery I present, because, I'm fresh off the boat, or off the Time War, depending on how you want to go by it. Ten pulled a Pertwee and spent most of his episode in bed, but like Pertwee, came up swinging, and at some point had a sword fight. It all sort of worked out for him. 11 sort of had a task only Peter Davison had, which was following after an immensely popular Doctor. And I think 11 did a better job, primarily because he was able to just hit the ball rolling, where Davison's Doctor had to spend a lot of it going, something's not right this time. I'm a bit crazy, and I've tearing this god-awful scarf here. It was the maroon one, I hated it. Going through like, I need to lie down in the zero room, or just put me in a crate, and go from there. The Beast Below was an episode I did not appreciate at the time when I saw it, but there's a lot of fun stuff here, a lot of emphasis on the Doctor's character. Really, a lot of what I like about Smith's era is the 11th Doctor himself. I like, which is the opposite response I have to David Tennant's era. I like the stories more than I like the Doctor. With Moffat's era, I like the Doctor more than I like the stories. So I can get through just about any episode if Matt Smith is in it. So yeah. Victory of the Daleks is it's a good Dalek story. Winston Churchill, I think, does great. Matt Smith does a great job sort of conveying his dislike of the Daleks. Everything he's gone through, the Time War, the whole of reality where he lost Rose Tyler, the Army of Ghosts story, and of course saving the reality story where he lost Donna. It all just sort of works. He really brings the whole weight of of the Doctor's dislike of the Daleks in that scene there. Really great. This is my Flesh and Stone and Time of the Angels, or Time of the Angels and Flesh and Stone, is my favorite Weeping Angel story. I think angels in a cave slowly waking up and sort of seeing what they do when they aren't at full power, I think works. The mystery of River Song, I think, is sort of at its best here. Yeah, the infamous Amy, forcing herself on the Doctor scene is here. But that's not till the tail end, so you'll be fine. Seeing the Doctor sort of engage in a battle of wits in a sort of chase base under siege story with Weeping Angels is fun. The Church of the Silence here, I think it's the Church of the Silence. Here is, well, I think it's just the church. They're here too, and I think they're great. Jorah Mormont is here, and that led to some fun memes. Jorah was touched by Weeping Angel, ended up in Westeros. It wrote itself. That was great. Oddly enough, Chris Chibnall's best story in my mind is the 11th Doctor story, The Return of the Silurians. I think that was fun. The Doctor is showing how you can create a new fixed point, an alternate timeline, or at least altering the timeline. Which, maybe if this had worked, it would have led to the Thousand World Empire that we see in Classic Who. That era that's supposed to happen, that hasn't happened yet. Sort of explaining why we haven't reached the Jetsons yet in our own world, when that was supposed to be like the year 2020. Like George Jetson was conceived. George Jetson is like 1 year old now, so we should be there. The Doctor trying to encourage everyone to be the best they can be for them to fail, for sort of very realistic reasons, I think was great. And this was this the first time? This was the second time Rory died, but this was the first time it mattered. The Pandorica opens is great. I know a lot of people are like, why isn't Vincent the Doctor here? That story is all right, but I think it's one of those stories that gets too much hype. I just can't enjoy it anymore. Same thing with Blink. Like, Blink's a good episode, but it's not like the second coming of Christ. Everyone recommends Blink. Like, you gotta watch Blink. I watched it. It was what it was. But this here, the Pandorica Big Bang, all right, the 11th Doctor doing his come at me bro moment. I love it. Yeah, I don't care if it turned out this was all a trap by the Doctor's enemies. It was still a great scene, and this was also, I think, yeah, I heard Sylvester McCoy read this speech too on YouTube. It was a really great scene. Loved it. I can't tell which one I like best. Then we come to season 6. Again, I would have redone certain events in this era, which I think would have made it flow a bit better. But overall, season 6 is another great one. The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon, not perfect when you look at it in its entirety, but in its own vacuum, I enjoy it still. This is the one time that we see Eleven and River really flirting in a sort of a fun way. It's hard to tell what makes the Doctor decide to do that. Based on the episode, he just sort of clicks with River sometimes he doesn't. The interesting back and forth that Amy has to deal with the fact whether or not she should tell the Doctor, hey, you die, is something weighing on. She's like, maybe we should damn the consequences and do it. The Silence are a great introduction, are a great new villain, a great new monster. Shame you can't do too much with them because of how they're set up. But it was a great way to explain why this conspiracy had been going on, and the Doctor never knew about it. It's because it's hard to prepare for something that you're going to forget when you look away from it. So, yeah. The Doctor's wife, Chef's Kiss. Chef's Kiss, Neil Gaiman and Doctor Who. Yes! Why isn't he a showrunner? Alright. I read his original... Actually, considering the fact that I heard about the original script that he planned, I think it might be for the best he wasn't a showrunner. But, is what it is. He's got a great mind for ideas. I would just go in, like, if he needs 2 episodes to tell a story, hey, we'll go over the script, and there's a good bet we're going to give you those 2 episodes. But, yeah, I would just let him do whatever. We check, like, no, you can't do that. Everything else, this overall premise, great. I don't care what anyone says. Outside of the Doctor's actual wife, in other words, the one he married in his first incarnation, this is the Doctor's real wife, alright? Put the TARDIS in a woman, and yes, Amy was right. Did he wish really, really hard? It was great. And their back and forth is some of the best I've ever seen for Doctor Who. So, great. A Good Man Goes to War is fun. It really is. I almost put the Rebel Flesh here, but that to me really felt one of those stories where the Doctor's performance carried me through that episode more than anything else. And there's a lot of fun stuff there, but really I couldn't. A Good Man Goes to War spoke on so many levels. It just sort of fell apart because Madame Kavarian really hates the 11th Doctor, or just the Doctor in general, and it never feels earned. It's like, I get the Kavarian chapter breaks off from the Church of the Silence to stop the Doctor, but she takes this way too personal. Like, she just loves watching him suffer. I'm like, there should be a bit more detachment from this. They're trying to stop him from reaching Trenzalore. So, where this acrimony coming from? Like, she never mentions she lost anyone or anything, so maybe not. There's also possible deterioration of Amy and the Doctor's relationship with the idea that her best friend is responsible, whether directly or indirectly, for the loss of her daughter. And the fact that she's sort of afraid to even be near him, I think was great. And the fact that it pushed Amy to the point where she even, like, pointed a gun at River. I sort of like that. This was also the introduction of the Paternoster gang, which, love or hate, it's not for everybody. I've been meaning to listen to their audios, and I'm actually kind of excited about that, but I've got Gallifrey stuff to listen to. And it takes a lot to take precedent over Gallifrey. I'm a loyal Gallifreyan patriot. Also, some of Matt Smith's best performances in this one. Night Terrors was an episode I tended to not look back at, but this is some good stuff here. Alright. I don't know why I said alright like that, but it sort of has everything I like in Doctor Who, the sort of horror aspect. Maybe it's because I've been listening to some sort of scarier audios like Chimes of Midnight and Night Thoughts. But here, the Doctor is sort of bonding with... I can't remember the kid's name. We're bonding with this kid, and the reveal that, hey, he's not really here. He's not human, and that explanation and how scary it all gets. Amy turning into a doll. All of it was really fun, really cool stuff. And I liked it better than Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Like, this could have been actually, if you just changed the time of year, this would have been a great Christmas special. Asylum of the Daleks. I know this works better as a Cyberman story, but I just love this idea. Alright? These battles. Really, what Asylum of the Daleks should have been was that it's one part Asylum, one part lab, where there's studying the Doctor, trying to compile the ultimate Dalek to deal with the Doctor. Alright? And the Doctor stumbles into that, like, this is what they're really planning, and this will be a Dalek the Doctor can't stop, because it will know everything about him. Alright? And you can say that that's what Oswin was being created to be, because she has access to the Dalek network, that he was never able to erase. The story in the scenes with, Amy and Roy being divorced, I already talked about how bad that was. So, there's that. Eleven's performance, I think, is great here, especially when he meets, I guess it's supposed to be the Dalek Emperor, or I guess the Speaker of the Dalek Parliament. I know some people thought it was a bad idea. I'm like, no, that makes sense. If you view it as, I think the problem is they use the word Parliament. I think if you called it the War Council of the Daleks, it would have been better. You'd have all these different Daleks coming in, even the Dalek Paradigm coming in, discussing new ways to take out enemies, even like the Cult of Skaro. Has a representative here. Like, this is where we come in to meet and we find new ways to conquer the universe and wipe out all non-Daleks. What are we going to do about the Cybermen guys? Like, they've messed the Doctor up more than we have. Like, we heard his spirit, but they've, killed him twice. What are we doing? We thought we killed him one time, and turns out he cheated. Go from there. A Town Called Mercy, I get it. Not that fun a story, but there's some really cool stuff. There's also, I don't think anyone could make the tweed, bow tie, cowboy hat work, but the man does, alright? Matt Smith is the GOAT for a reason. It should be cringe. It probably is cringe, but he makes cringe work. And isn't that everyone's dream? It's mine. Coming on to season 70, I didn't like Angels Take Manhattan. The Snowman is fun. Clara Oswin is best Clara, as I said before. The Doctor's close here was great. He does sad better than the 10th Doctor, who just looks sad. And then, I'm just gonna not talk to people, and then I'm gonna go talk to people by traveling. Them are like, you know what? I'm just not traveling. I'm in the TARDIS, but I'm not going anywhere. Alright, I'm done. It's too painful. All right, this is better than 10. 10's like, yeah, I'm sad. Let's go around and talk to people, even though I said I shouldn't talk to people. Like, he's got friends in the Paternoster gang trying to bring him out of his self-isolation. It's not working. He's stubbornly going in, but he also, through meeting Clara Oswald, realized, hey, I do miss this. All right, which is interesting because in the Day of the Doctor novel, the War Doctor does admit that he misses being the Doctor. So it all works on levels. Moffat's really good when he sort of takes a step back and goes simplicity. When he goes complicated, it tends to run away with him. Bells of St. John, another episode I didn't appreciate at the time, but this also just shows off how smart the 11th Doctor is, as he just sort of out-hacks people from a laptop in one hand, like, yeah, you think you're better than me? No, you're not. Oh, you're clever. Oh, watch this. Oh. Watch me go. There was rarely a moment where he wasn't in control of that episode. This was also a great introduction to Clara Oswald and the fact that, you know, it's tempting, but she does sort of want to prioritize her life, you know, as a nanny and helping out this family. It is sort of tender, and I think something that the Chibnall era failed at, and that Clara will struggle with during the Capaldi era. But whatever. Hyde, greatly, this episode was sort of underappreciated at the time, but it really is funny, it's scary, it does sort of work at what it's trying to do. The problem with, I think, Season 7B is a lot of it isn't as amazing as it wants to be. Nightmare in Silver, purely because of the Doctor and Mr. Clever. That back and forth was great, alright? Matt Smith is possibly one of, if not the best New Who actor. Let's have that conversation, people. Let's have that conversation, alright? But overall, really fun. Really fun. Evil Matt Smith may be best Matt Smith, which led to Damon Targaryen. I don't care what anyone says. And then finally, name, day, and time of the Doctor. Yes, I know. So Name of the Doctor is a bit weird in some ways, but I think it does sort of, in terms of revealing what the Doctor is, what the Doctor's biggest secret is, not his name, but the person who betrayed the name. When the Doctor sort of fears going to his grave, that is a great moment. When the Doctor realizes what's supposed to happen here, the fact that the shame of what he did is so great that he will take it to his grave. The giant TARDIS. Love it. Day of the Doctor coming to terms with his past. Honestly, read the novel. The special doesn't do it any... The special, as an episode, is fun, but mostly for the Doctor interactions. It is trying to tell a really good story. I think the novel, also written by Stephen Moffat, I think does a better way of explaining why this is the Day of the Doctor. Alright? Really great scene. Really great scene at the end. Love it. And Time of the Doctor sort of culminates all of it together with the end of this Doctor's character arc and of the character arc of the Doctor as a whole, which will sort of come full circle in the Capaldi era. So it all sort of works on that great level. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am an 11th Doctor stan. This video is over an hour long. Oh my god, no one's going to want to watch this. Actually, it will be over an hour long because I had to add something to it. So, yes, I'm sorry. This is who I am. This is longer than any other video I've done for Doctor Who, and it really is because the 11th Doctor has been such a great... He's my favorite incarnation. That is. Like, he's always, like, for... I did the classic Who ranking, and by default, Matt Smith wasn't there. But if I were to do the personal ranking, you would see the 11th Doctor at my S rank. And it would just go down from there. Like, there are others in the S rank, but no matter what the list, it is always going to start out with the 11th Doctor, and everyone else dukes it out for... Actually, everyone's doing it out for 2, 3, for, like, if they're not all S, if my favorites aren't all S, they're all duking out for placements for the second and third medal. They all just rotate, but he will always be my favorite because there's something great about this goofy person being this ultimate hero. All right, something great about it. Like, and he's not just goofy for the sake of it. It's also clearly a way to distance himself from the pain of his life. All right, it's easier to laugh because when you're laughing, you don't have to think about how sad you really are. All right, it works on some ways. So anyway, with that in mind, let's bring this to a well-deserved close here. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tank and you made it this far, thank you so much. All right, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. What's your favorite 11th Doctor moment? I'll leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'll catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching, and as always, may your fandom serve you well.
Please don't change.
kidneys! I've got new kidneys! I don't like the colour.
Off your kidneys. What's happening?
We're probably catching. Oh!
It's a what?
Stay calm. Just one question. Do you happen to know how to fly this thing?